Is this thing on? Is this thing on? Hello to all you beautiful music makers and world shakers, and welcome to the 8th annual and first virtual Modern Band Summit. This cyber explosion of collaboration, friendship, community, learning, laughing, crying, dancing, and rejuvenation is sponsored by our good friends at Bohemian Foundation and Niagara Cares, two organizations who have donated millions of dollars to Little Kids Rock programs across the United States. They are standing by music teachers even now, especially now, and we thank them and love you very much. My name is Dave, and I'm with Little Kids Rock, the presenters of Modern Band Summit. I am humbled and grateful to be a small part of the team that has worked with speed, skill, passion, dedication, some degree of panic, and humor to bring the Modern Band Summit into the cloud for the first time this year. So hats off to a singular and very hardworking and loving team. For new friends, Little Kids Rock is a nonprofit organization that transforms lives by restoring, expanding, and innovating music programming in schools. We do this through our professional development for teachers, through our curriculum for students, through the community that we get to build with you, and through instrument donations to schools. Little Kids Rock also coined the term modern band, a new type of music program that we'll all be learning a lot more about in the coming days. Since 2002, we've had the honor of supporting over 5,000 educators like you in nearly every state of the union. And I'm proud to announce that this year, that all of the Little Kids Rock family collectively have brought the transformational gift of music to over 1 million students. The Little Kids Rock staff is profoundly grateful to have the opportunity to support your amazing work. We love you so much. And we are so profoundly grateful, and we cannot wait until we can see you again in person to celebrate. Also, we love you so much that our hearts ache for the loss of loved ones and other losses that many of you have experienced as a result of this disease. We live in remarkable times as we face this global pandemic. This is a remarkable moment of reckoning as our nation faces up to its racist past and racist present. So to help us compose a better future for our kids and for ourselves, it's only right that we should start the summit off right by hearing from a remarkable individual. And it is my pleasure to introduce him. So Brian Hardgroove is a record producer, bassist, drummer, member of on hiatus of the legendary hip-hop group Public Enemy. He's worked with the likes of Steven Tyler and Joe Perry of Aerosmith, Burning Spear, Mark Anthony, Supertramp, and many others, and is currently producing 2 album projects with Stuart Copeland of The Police and Fred Schneider of the B-52s. Honorary nod to the B-52s there. He served as a faculty and artist in residence at Santa Fe University of Art and Design. His home state of New Mexico recognizes May 8th as Brian Hardgroove Day in honor of his many accomplishments. But because one day is not enough for a dude like Brian, his hometown of Santa Fe proclaimed June 7th as a second Brian Hardgroove Day. And if all of that were not enough, Brian is also a hugely nice and generous guy and a huge proponent of music education and supporter of modern band. I met Brian way back in 2004 when he participated in a very special recording session to benefit Little Kids Rock. Since that time, he's been a generous supporter of our work. He's visited with classrooms run by Little Kids Rock teachers like John Flora in Jersey City and Eric Herndon in Atlanta. He's brought other musical supporters and guests into our community like Bootsy Collins. He's invited us to industry panels, and he is himself a past guest artist of the Modern Band Summit. In short, Brian is a person who shows up time and time again for our kids and for our teachers. So, fellow music educators, it is my privilege to introduce you to your friend and mine, live from New Mexico, the one, the only, Mr. Brian Hardgroove. Put your virtual hands together.
Hey, Brian, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good
All
now.
right. As a musician, you think I'd know to hit the unmute button. But thank you for that nice introduction, Dave. I really appreciate it. When Dave asked me to do this keynote address, it was very moving for me to think about all the memories I have for people who have inspired me, guided me, and stood next to me in my journey. And the beginning of that journey, after my parents, were my instructors in school because they are in the next parental position. So the purpose of this for me is to encourage you all to really stick with it, even in these unprecedented times, and to give you an inside view of just how your role affected me. In another lifetime, it would be you. It could be either any one of you helping me on my course. So I'd like to start with just the acknowledgement of how difficult it is for teachers, no matter what they're teaching now. Unfortunately, in our society, in our system of things, teachers have been used, unfortunately, as a pawn in many political situations. And without getting into too much detail of the one we're in now, I understand that in many cases, it's a matter of life and death. And that's not an opinion, it's a fact. And the importance of teachers gets highlighted even more at times like this. And I don't want to lose focus of that fact. And I just want you to hear me say that I understand that many of you may have to make different decisions in the coming weeks about your profession. And it needs to boil down to, obviously, what's best for you and your family. And I support that no matter what anyone decides to do. And it's important when making those decisions that it's discussed with people who are honest brokers in the conversation. When teachers come up in a conversation, or education schools come up in conversations, you'll hear some corners talk about the economics of that, of having kids at home. And then you'll hear people talk about, well, the health risk of having kids in school. And somewhere in that conversation, you'll find many dishonest brokers in the conversation. And it's very important that you understand that many people, if not most people, understand exactly what you're dealing with, and we're behind you. I have to believe that most people are behind you. So I just wanted to open up by acknowledging that, okay? The next thing is impact. My personal experiences in school were challenging in that I was bussed into fairly hostile neighborhoods. My elementary school, junior high, and high school career. I was on the first wave of forced busing in New York City. And the experiences were fairly traumatic. But there were a couple of individuals, instructors particularly, who helped me and a lot of my friends through it. And they kept our curiosity alive and kept our humanity protected. A couple of two instructors I like to reference is Mr. Cohen. At 14 years old, I had a course called Film Arts. And at 14, we studied the shower scene in Psycho. Now, at 14, I wasn't old enough to see Psycho. And one of the most traumatic scenes in that film was that shower scene. But we studied the editing of that film. We also studied, and he talked about the symbology of a lot of what was going on in that scene. And we also studied a film called Battleship Potemkin, which is a Sergei Eisenstein film. We studied particularly a scene called the Odessa Steps. And Mr. Cohen, he laid out so powerfully to our young minds that editing is a very powerful tool. And at the time, the Vietnam War was going on, and we had a lot of international conflicts, and we had domestic issues. And what he was surreptitiously doing was teaching us young kids, Black and white and Asian, because that was primarily the makeup of the school, mostly white. He was teaching us to watch what we're taking in. And he taught us that in editing, for example, he just used editing as an example, messaging comes through. So the Odessa Step scene, for those of you that have seen the film, he reversed the slaughter of the citizens. They were being attacked. If I remember correctly, it's been so long since I've seen it. They were being attacked by Russian soldiers because a revolution was happening. They were being attacked and killed on these steps by Russian soldiers. But he re-edited it to make it look like they were actually being attacked by the ship that was just off shore, that was actually out to sea when the revolution began. So he just totally flipped that scenario, and it was very powerful, a very powerful tool to have when I then watched the news. Okay, extremely powerful, and he could not have taught us that with the okay of the school system. I can't believe, even as progressive as it was at that time, and I think that was the last year of any progressive teaching to young students, there's no way they would have said, teach these kids to watch the news effectively. So Mr. Cohen always stands out to me. And then I had a music instructor, Mr. Berman, excuse me, sweetheart of a guy, but I was in the orchestra class, and music was a love of mine. And I got no joy out of being in that class. And Mr. Berman was just the sweetest guy. I remember him to this day. But the way in which he was instructed to teach us just didn't reach me. I ended up improvising a lot of stuff that he actually dug, but it was not really helping my music education. The most effective thing I got out of school was that film arts course between the artistic classes that I had. It was the film arts course because it actually spoke to me as an individual about what was deeply important, and that is justice. So as I went through life, these two characters always came up in my life because, we're of, how many character types, 8 or 12, whatever it is, somebody's going to remind you of somebody. So at every point that those teachers were brought up in my mind as memories that may have been triggered by someone who either looked like them or sound like them or said something that they said that I remembered, it was always a clear reminder of just how important the positions those teachers were in my life. And it just stayed with me. Both experiences from the individuals, the teachers, were really good personal experiences, okay? But the thing that I had a love for, which is music, didn't resonate with me the way it was being taught. Film arts, which is something I also have a love for, but I didn't know at the time, that really resonated with me. And that actually has become a part of my life as well. So from a personal experience, I understand exactly where instructors like yourselves sit in the lives of children, okay? Because that's what, I was a child when it happened. And it stays with us. I know you know that, but you can never be reminded of something that critical enough. You can never be over-reminded about that. So I wanted to share that. Now, David mentioned the unprecedented times we're in and the racial issues we have.
Yeah, teach.
We've had them ever since the country was born. And we don't know how this is going to shake out this time, but we do know it's different. The most obvious difference about it is that it's not just the people who are affected by these things that are protesting. It wasn't always just the people who are affected, but there's so many more of those who would be considered privileged and not have to worry about these things. So it's become an issue for a lot of organizations and teachers, the issue of how to address these things with kids, because you can't ignore an elephant in the room. You just can't. You can, but you should not, especially at a time like this. And I'm here to say, for those of you who are struggling with how to discuss this with students, whether you're Black or not, you really should understand that you have a leg up in this conversation. You actually do, because when students are sitting in front of you, I'm not far away from my childhood. I'm just not. I've always felt, I remember when I was 30 years old, someone asked me how old I was, and I honestly said I was 18. It was an honest response. And then when I heard 18 reverberate, I'm like, whoa, I'm not 18, I'm 30 years old. It's because there's a certain part of my character that is always forward. And that's the most positive part of me, which is mostly attached to my youth. So when you have kids in front of you, you have a leg up, especially when you're teaching something that they don't have to have. And when I say have to have, meaning it's not required. So if they're there, they're there because they want to be there. Now, what you're teaching should be required. It was required when I was in school. But Little Kids Rock exists because that requirement has disappeared in large part. So you have kids in front of you who want to be there. And when they want to be there, then you have access to parts of their psyche that you may not have if you're a math teacher and they're struggling with math, that you may not have. So the leg up in discussing race is the fact that that they're in front of you willingly. And when folks say, I don't know what to say, I say, I just went into a contract with the United Way about to help them address United Way of Santa Fe County, to help them address their conversations about race, to help them develop their conversations about race. And one of the executives said, well, you know, regarding the situation, I just don't know what to say regarding race issues. And she was a white woman from the South. And I said, you know what to say. And the reason I said to her, the reason I know you know what to say is because I give you the same humanity that I have. If I see an injustice, I know what to say. So I have to assume that you're just as human as I am. So what you don't know is maybe how to say it. That's fair. But maybe what you're struggling with is you don't know if you want to say anything. That's a different thing. Okay. So you've got that leg up, and you'll have to decide how you want to discuss these things. So that leads me to a connected story of a young girl I went to school with. Her name was Joyce Carpenetto. And Joyce was a beautiful Italian-American girl, that I went to junior high and high school with. And she had the privilege of being extremely popular because she was so attractive and so sweet. I remember Joyce so powerfully for being a champion for all of us, for people who were being treated unfairly. Like I said, it was a hostile environment. We were in neighborhoods that didn't want us there. And Joyce took that power, which translates to privilege, okay? And she would read the riot act to anyone who needed to hear it. And I remember clearly one day, she was a sharp dresser too. She was just, oh, there's a picture of her right there. She was a very sharp dresser as well. And I'll never forget one day she was in school, had this long green dress, looked like she was going out to a fancy dinner or something. And she was standing in the doorway, just hammering. I believe it was one of the teachers, because something was happening to one of the students and that teacher was not addressing it. And she was just a champion for people. And that advantage was power that she had. Now, whenever I leave New Mexico, I often fly out of the Albuquerque. I live in Santa Fe, but I often fly out of the Albuquerque Sunport. And in the Albuquerque Sunport, I don't always, I found it once and I didn't have to find it again. I know where it is. The 9/11 memorial plaque, which is in a few airports across the country. And whenever I check in, get my shoes back and redress, I walk towards the gate and I go to the plaque. And I look at Joyce's name, I say hello to her, and I say goodbye to her. And I say thank you. She died on 9/11 in one of the towers, and I didn't find out till a couple of years later. And when I found out, it was when most of us started using the internet a lot, and there was some forums dedicated to people who died from various communities, and then one of them was broken down at the high schools, and I saw that Joyce had perished, and there were tributes to her, and tributes to this day that I see, where they talk about Joyce one was as a 6-year-old, how she was just a fighter for what was right. And I remember her. She was as a 6-year-old, as just being past a toddler, she was like that. And she was like that when I knew her. And apparently she passed away like that. You know, she'd gotten divorced and she helped find a wife for her ex-husband. She was that kind of a person. Okay. So that privilege that she had was used as a weapon for us. You've got that. The instructors who are not Black or instructors of color who are often hearing that they have privilege in life, whether it's true or not, depending on what you're talking about. That's a privilege that you can use to help these young kids who may be in the crosshairs of this drama that's happening in this country. Hearing from you would move these children in ways that you could never understand. But remember, if you're saying something like, I don't know what to say, remember that the humanism you have is the same humanism they have. And you'll find out what to say, because just put yourself in their place and you know what they'd want to hear. So I just wanted to address that since they've brought it up. The position that you guys hold in the lives of children is just way too important to be treated the way it's treated in our society. You know, I don't like when teachers are used as pawns. All the teachers I've had, even the ones I didn't like, that I may not have liked, had a profound impact on me, you know? So when Dave asked me to address you today, I said, well, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do it in uniform, which is why I wore my Public Enemy shirt. And I had to get this out of mothballs because I haven't traveled with the band for a couple of years. But you need to know that every kid has the possibility, and I'm sure you know it, but you can never hear enough. Every kid has the possibility to do something that impacts that not only the generations that they're going to be living in, but the generations that preceded them. You know, young people do have a backwards impact as well, depending on what's happening, depending on what they might get involved in. So I admire you guys so much. I love you. I thank you on behalf of the students that I know are like me. Okay. I want to thank you. And I want to thank Dave for inviting me into this family. And just remember that I'll just close with a simple statement. It came to me just before I got on today. Never forget that we always remember. Okay, we carry childhood experiences forever. Teachers are the next most important people in a young kid's life after their parents, which is why we get so devastated when inappropriate things happen between students and teachers, just like parents and teachers. So you guys are so important. I thank you for what you've done. I thank you for what you're going to do. I'm not far away from that. The next kid you see, think of me, because I'm not far away from him or her. All right. And with that said, I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much, Dave, for inviting me. Thank you all. Have a great summit. And I hope to see you when this cloud lifts. I hope to see as many of you as possible in person. All the best.
Thank you so much, Brian. We love you.
Love you today.
Mwah. Big virtual hugs and kisses. And the next session is going to start at 2:45, and I'm so glad that we had to have this time together. So huge virtual high five, everybody. Go and have a bio break, and then go to your next session. It's going to be just as amazing. Love you.